So now next issue is relating to exemptions in GST. See, basically the GST rates will be indicated in tariff. We have got today central excise tariff or customs tariff, which is based on harmonized system of nomenclature, HSN. Similar tariff will be there in GST also, because unless you have got proper tariff, you cannot indicate the rates. And this tariff will be surely on the basis of HSN itself. So whatever rate which is given in the tariff, it is called a tariff rate. Now, it is not necessary that every time you will be asked to pay GST only on the basis of tariff rate only. So exemptions can be given. Now those exemptions can be given today also by issue of a notification, and that notification can be issued by central government, not CPC, it is central government. But now such exemption can be issued only on recommendation of the GST Council. So now issuing exemptions will not be as easy as it was earlier. Now, as you know, today on 28th February they issue notifications, and from 1st March they become effective for excise and service tax. Now this will not be possible under GST, because they cannot issue such overnight exemption notification. It has to be on the recommendation of GST Council. So the recommendation they may or may not accept, but surely such recommendation cannot be overnight. So that overnight changes in law will be there now under GST only in case of customs, because for customs there is that provision is still there under provisional correction of taxes act, that they can immediately make it effective. But such provision may not be there or under GST, because any exemption can be issued only on the basis of recommendation of GST Council. But if government feels like, they may change the provision and they say government can issue notification on its own. But it is better that it is on the recommendation of GST Council. Otherwise, state governments and central government will issue exemption left and right, uncontrolled. So that way this provision is really good. But of course this will delay, because you have to take the matter to GST Council and then they will approve and then they will recommend. So such quick exemptions which are today possible will not be possible in GST. Today if you convince the minister, he can issue exemption notification next day. Conviction can be by any other method, but by whatever method you are able to convince him, if he can issue notification next day. But this is not possible under GST. Now such exemption can be conditional or unconditional. It can be partial or complete. Now only thing is that exemption cannot be given or withdrawn with retrospective effect. By notification you cannot withdraw the exemption with retrospective effect or give exemption with retrospective effect. But those powers are with Parliament. Parliament can withdraw with retrospective effect. Parliament, there are no restrictions on powers of Parliament to impose a tax or to give a tax relief. They can, if they feel like, Parliament can give with retrospective effect. Parliament can impose tax with retrospective effect. Of course, now the BJP government has agreed that there will be no retrospective amendment, but that is only promise. There is no statutory bar on such a provision. Now, exemption should be in public interest. Now, and this again is a very funny provision which they have copied from excise, that unconditional exemption is mandatory. A conditional exemption is at the option of a taxable person. When two exemptions are available, option is to taxable person to decide which exemption should be availed. Then government cannot compel you, you must avail this exemption. Out of the two exemptions, whatever suits me more, I will avail. But why unconditional exemption is mandatory? It is incorrect. Because suppose this exemption doesn't suit me. Because if I claim exemption, I cannot get the credit. my input tax credit. So many times this exemption doesn't suit me. It is not in my interest. I want to pay tax, but still government says if it is unconditional, you are not allowed to pay GST. But this is an absolutely absurd provision. You are compelling me to avail a benefit which I don't need. That is not a benefit for me, that is actually penalty for me. But you say, no, you must avail this. You see, basically, I am not an idiot. When I don't want exemption, means there is some reason for which I don't want exemption. For अगले वाले को credit मिल रहा है, so then that exemption is no use for me. Or there may be any other reasons for which this, for example, I will use classic example कि tractors below 15 horsepower, they are exempt from excise, and tractors above 15 horsepower are subject to excise. Now, actually, exemption to tractors below 15 horsepower is a punishment for them. Okay. It is not a benefit, because what happens, once it is exemption, then you cannot send material for job work under Rule 45. So if at all you want to send material for job work, then service tax becomes payable. Now, say input services you are utilizing for tractors below 15 horsepower, above 15 horsepower, then all material you are using for below 15 horsepower, above 15 horsepower, then you have to go through all rigmarole of this Rule 6 of Senvat credit rules. Sending material for job work becomes difficult if your product is exempt from, because you cannot give a declaration and I will pay duty on the coming back. So these tractors, 15 horsepower tractors वाले तो हाथ जोड़ के गवर्नमेंट के पास गए कि हम पर दया करो और ये हमको exemption से मुक्ति दो, पर गवर्नमेंट नहीं हमने आपको मुक्ति देंगे, आपको exemption करना ही पड़ेगा. So this is a very funny provision, but anyway they are continuing in the GST also. Now this burden of proof is on taxable person. Now exemption is an exception. So if you want to claim an exemption, then you have to prove that I am eligible for the exemption. So burden of proof that I am eligible under those conditions is on the taxable person. You see here they have used the word taxable person and not assessee. Now that you have to forget the word about assessee, now you have to remember the word taxable person. Now this exemption notification has to be strictly construed. It cannot have a liberal meaning. But purposive interpretation, I mean these are all rules of interpretation. Ki purpose, that is what is the purpose behind that notification, that has to be kept in mind while interpreting the notification. Now strict interpretation at first stage, but not at subsequent stages. That is, if there are 3-4 conditions, then the basic condition has to be strictly complied with. Other conditions maybe are procedure, it need not be strictly complied with. Now there are procedures are of two types, mandatory and directory. Now mandatory procedures must be complied with. If you don't comply with mandatory provision, then you just don't get that benefit at all. But directory provisions are such that it is better, you try to comply with those provisions, but if you are not able to comply with those procedures for some reason, then they are not mandatory, and then even if you don't fulfill the directory procedure, you can still get the benefit. But if the procedure is mandatory and if you don't follow that procedure, then you cannot claim that exemption. Now again, this is relevance of end use. Again, same product may be utilized for various end uses. Generally, exemption is, when they give an exemption, it doesn't depend on the end use, unless the end use is specified in the exemption notification itself. If the exemption notification itself says that this is allowed for this end use, then only that exemption is allowable. But exemption, if exemption notification does not say about end use, then that exemption is a general exemption. Now, this is again a meaning of for use, because many times they say this is for use in machinery or for use in so and so. For use means for intended use. If they say for use means for intended use in machinery. If they wanted to, it must be used in the machinery, then the word will be used in the machinery. But if they say for use in the machinery, means for intended use in the machinery. These are all rules of interpretation of an exemption notification. So I am giving you in brief. Now this again is a concept in exemption, that is a promissory estoppel. Now, what is the principle of promissory exemption can be withdrawn anytime. Government has full powers. I mean, once I give an exemption and if government feels that circumstances have changed, then you have no right that exemption must continue. Exemption can be withdrawn anytime unless specific period is indicated. That government says this exemption will be available up to so and so, this exemption. Then I rely on the statement of the government. Government says, for example, Himachal Pradesh, government says the exemption is available up to 31st March 2017. I rely on the statement and I put a factory. And then suddenly say, no, after 2014, no exemption. Now then what will now I cannot shift my factory to some other place. I have acted on the basis of the promise of the government. In that case, such exemption cannot be.
So it means they can't scrap area-based exemptions provided to northeastern states and Himachal.
Because but here they say, I am not changing the promise. I have given the promise that there will be no excise. So that promise is there is no excise. So at Himachal Pradesh, what they said, I had given you promise that there will be no excise duty. I am fulfilling that promise. There is no excise duty. I had not given promise that there will be no other tax. So GST will be there, you pay GST. I mean, government can act, but they are not expected to act in this fashion. So they will give some transitory reliefs to such Himachal Pradesh unit. Government will not go strictly by the law. Strictly by the law, government can say, I had promised you excise exemption. I had never promised you GST exemption. So, but otherwise there is a promissory exemption. If government gives a promise and if I act upon that promise, then government cannot change the. But otherwise, there is no law that exemption cannot be withdrawn. Government is free to withdraw exemption anytime.
Sir, ये retrospective effects will be.
But only Parliament can do it.
Ultra-virus
notification. नहीं notification नहीं. हाँ?
कोई judiciary ने अगर ultra-virus declare कर दिया notification.
Notification ultra-virus. That's what I said. कि judiciary can, I mean, Parliament can amend any notification with retrospective effect. Suppose judiciary ने कोई notification ये कर दिया, ultra-virus कर दिया, so Parliament can validate that notification with retrospective effect. Parliament powers cannot be controlled by any authority. They are supreme power. But that cannot be done by government. Even that cannot be done by GST Council also. That has to be only by that authority with the Parliament only. Okay. Now as we discussed today, a small taxable person having turnover of less than rupees 10 lakhs could be exempt from GST. The definition of aggregate turnover is faulty because all non-taxable turnover etc. is also getting included. So that is not the intention. That is only taxable turnover if less than 10 lakhs, then exemption should be available. Now, small industries up to 1.5 crores, they will be exempt. If turnover is less than 1.5 crores, then generally it is expected that the control will be by state authorities. If it is above 1.5 crores, anyway, if turnover is more than 1.5 crores, then turnover control will be by both the authorities, central and state. Even today, we have got state authorities and central authorities that will continue. Now, of course, they are not announced what are the exemptions, but what are the possible exemptions. Ki supplies to SEZ will be exports, they will be exempt. Goods of mass consumption, poor mass consumption, they will be generally more broadly exempted. Agricultural produce, it will be generally exempted from GST. Textiles, at present, textile is practically out of excise net. Most probably, it will continue.
So whether exemption in GST are at national level for pan-India or whether states can issue its own exemption?
State can issue its own exemption, though they are not supposed to do so. States are supposed to follow the recommendations of GST Council, but there is no statutory binding on state that they must follow the guidance.
States can exempt Only SGST portion, they can't
Of course,
exempt
no,
CGST.
they cannot. That goes without saying. Even center can exempt only CGST and IGST. Though at least they are supposed to act in unison, because you see GST recommendation has to be with 75% majority, and out of that GST Council, central government has only 33% voting. Balance 67% voting is with state government. So, of course, that means central government has veto powers, because when 75% voting is required, and if central government says no, then even if all 29 states say yes, it doesn't matter, because then voting cannot be 75%. But if only central government says कि नहीं मेरी मुर्गी एक ही टाइम, तो वो नहीं चलेगा, because at least say maybe 20 states should agree, because you have to get 75% majority. So at least 20 states have to agree, then only that 75%
But the
voting.
GST Council can only make recommendations. It is not necessary to follow those instructions. It is not mandatory. So states can issue different exemptions. On
They can issue. You see, ultimately, all laws and all provisions are for gentlemen. If you are a crook, then there are no rules and there are no notifications and there are no procedures. So all these recommendations, etc., are under assumption that state governments will act fairly and reasonably, and central government will also act fairly and reasonably. When 75% of the states are saying that this is correct, then normally you have to assume that there is this what they are saying is reasonable and sensible. No, but if you are a crook and if you just no adamant, then what to do? Then nothing can be done. That's what they say. All rules and all procedures and all is only for gentlemen. There are no rules for crooks. If you are a crook, then there are no rules. Okay. Then possible exemption to services. These are possible exemptions. Agriculture related services will be mostly exempt, but up to primary level, after primary level there will be no exemption. Basic education will be mostly exempted. Basic health related services will be mostly exempted. Services by employer to employer, that have a specific provision that there will be no tax. Export of services will be mostly exempt from service tax. Now this again, as I told you, that there is difference in the composition scheme. For small taxpayers, they cannot follow all these rigmaroles of 37 returns, and it is beyond their capacity. So they will be given a choice to pay tax at a flat rate, maybe at 4% or something, and then you cannot get any input tax credit. You cannot charge that GST in the invoice. Of course, it will be optional. And again, currency conversion, sale of lottery tickets, etc. The invoice cannot show the your value of GST. For that, composition scheme will be available. Okay, so these are some basic issues relating to exemption notification.